On a night when the city wore masks for fun, one man wore a mask to hide the monster within, and in the clash between the two, we discovered a truth about ourselves we had long forgotten. It was Halloween, a night painted in strokes of orange and black, of laughter and playful screams echoing through the concrete canyons of the metropolis. Down below, in the city's metallic arteries, the subway train was a river of vibrant life. People were heading to parties, their faces painted as ghouls and heroes, their costumes a riot of color and imagination. The air hummed with a cheerful electric energy. It was a moving festival, a capsule of joy hurtling through the darkness. In one of the cars, a man sat quietly, an island of stillness in the sea of celebration. He was dressed as a famous smiling villain, his purple suit immaculate, his green hair perfectly coiffed. Some passengers smiled at the accuracy of his costume, seeing him as just another participant in the night's revelry. But beneath the painted smile was no joy. Beneath the costume was not a character, but a chasm of despair. His name was Leo Vance, and he had not come to celebrate. He had come to orchestrate an ending. The festive hum was shattered by a single piercing scream. In an instant, the world tilted. Leo was on his feet, the illusion of his costume evaporating to reveal a terrifying reality. In one hand, he held a canister, and from it, he sprayed a corrosive chemical into the eyes of an elderly gentleman, Starrison, who had been quietly reading his newspaper. As the 72-year-old man recoiled in agony, Leo produced a long kitchen knife, its steel edge catching the fluorescent train lights with a cold, cruel glint. He plunged it into the old man's chest. The car erupted into a cacophony of panic. The laughter of moments before was replaced by shrieks of terror. People scrambled back, a wave of humanity recoiling from the epicenter of the violence. But Leo was not finished. He had studied tragedy. He had researched how to turn a single act of violence into a monument of horror. He pulled out bottles filled with a flammable liquid, splashing it across the floor and seats of the train car, the acrid smell cutting through the air. The train was still moving, a sealed container filled with terrified people and the promise of an inferno. He held up a lighter, its tiny flame flickering like a malevolent star. In that moment, he was the director of a nightmare, and he intended for no one to see the morning. This was the moment the story could have ended, a footnote in a history of senseless tragedies. This was the point where fear was supposed to win, where chaos was meant to reign supreme. But something else happened. In that train car, suspended between stations, a different kind of fire was lit. It wasn't the fire of destruction Leo Vance held in his hand. It was the fire of the human spirit. It started not with a hero, but with a sound. Someone, a student in a wizard's costume, lunged for the wall and slammed their hand on the red emergency alarm button. The blaring sound cut through the panic, a signal that they were not entirely alone. It was a spark, and then another. A woman, her face painted like a skeleton, began screaming, not in fear, but with direction. The windows. Get to the windows. Suddenly, the chaos found a purpose. The frantic, terrified crowd transformed into a single, determined organism with one goal: survival. They were no longer just passengers, they were a team. People began pulling the emergency levers to unlock the doors, but the train was not perfectly aligned with the platform. It was the windows that offered the truest escape. Strangers began to work together with a seamless, unspoken urgency. A young man with broad shoulders used his elbow to shatter a window. Hands scraped and bleeding pulled away the remaining shards of glass, and then the escape began. They didn't just climb out for themselves, they formed a human chain. The first person out reached back, grabbing the hand of the next. A businessman in a torn suit boosted a teenager through the opening. Someone caught a child who was passed through the narrow gap. They pulled, they pushed, they encouraged. Cries of "Hurry" and "I've got you" replaced the screams of terror. They were saving each other. They were refusing to be victims. They were rewriting the ending to Leo's story with every person they pulled to safety on the narrow ledge outside the train. When the authorities finally stormed the car, they found Leo Vance sitting alone, calmly smoking a cigarette. His lighter unused, his grand finale of fire and death, thwarted by the simple, powerful courage of ordinary people. After his arrest, the motive became chillingly clear. Leo hadn't been driven by a grand ideology or a political cause. He was driven by a profound emptiness. He told investigators he was depressed, unemployed, and alienated from his friends. He wanted to die but couldn't bring himself to end his own life. So he concocted this horrific plan, hoping that by creating a spectacle of mass death, the state would do it for him. He craved the death penalty, saw his act of destruction as a twisted form of escape. He tried to extinguish dozens of lives simply because he no longer valued his own. But here is the true heart of the story, the part that must be remembered above all else. Leo Vance failed, not just because he was arrested, but because his core belief was proven wrong. He believed life was cheap, that despair was the ultimate force. The passengers of that train proved him wrong. They proved that the will to live, the instinct to protect one another, is an infinitely more powerful force. And the proof wasn't just in their escape, it was in their recovery. 17 people were injured that night, but every single one of them survived. And Mr. Harrison, the 72-year-old man who had borne the brunt of the initial savage attack, the man with a punctured lung and chemically burned eyes, he recovered too. He lived. His survival was the ultimate defiance to an act born of a death wish. Leo Vance will likely spend the rest of his life in a prison cell, denied the ending he so desperately craved, is a living testament to the failure of hate. But the passengers, they carry a different testament. They are living proof that when darkness descends, our first instinct is not to surrender, but to reach for the light and to pull others along with us. That night, one man tried to show the world how easy it is to destroy. But hundreds of ordinary people showed the world how powerful it is to endure, to unite, and to choose life.